Well, hello and welcome everyone. Thanks for joining today's webinar. My name is Simon Watkins and I'm Director of Storage Marketing at HPE. I'll be your moderator today. I'm delighted to be joined by two expert speakers today, Nathan McAfee, who is Principal Economic Analyst for Enterprise Strategy Group, and Sanjay Jagat, who is VP of Product Management for HPE's Hybrid Cloud business. So the objective of today's webinar is to share the findings from a new report from ESG that validates the economic benefits you can expect when deploying HPE Alletra Storage MP B10000. And to do that, we're going to first turn it over to Sanjay to provide an overview of the unique features and benefits of the B10000. And following that, we'll flip it to Nathan to step us through ESG's economic validation analysis, which uses ESG's both market knowledge as well as customer interviews to show how the B10000 really stacked up in cost savings and benefits compared to legacy storage solutions. So let's dive right in. Welcome, Sanjay. As VP of Product Management, I know you've been closely involved in driving the evolution of the B10000 since we first launched it 2 years ago. So why don't you kick things off with an overview of this unique product and the benefits and outcomes it can deliver?
Thank you, Simon. And I think it is fantastic to come and talk about this wonderful product line, right? As Simon, you mentioned, yes, I've been involved from the very go. And I've been in the storage industry for almost 25 years. So I've seen the evolution of storage. Right? If you look at just the basic way of how storage systems are built, designed, if you look at in the early 2000s, and if you go back and look at it, the main purpose of storage was to make sure that, you are storing the data, right? And you have where your data is living. So it was a repository of value. But if you look at today, if you look at the 2020s and the latest and the greatest definition of what storage is where data comes alive, right? It's where the data gets created. If you look at it in the old legacy architectures, right, the storage systems have not changed since the early 2000s, right? You still have your box, you have your HA pairs, and you have disk along with it. Now, challenges with those kind of architectures are those storage architectures lend themselves to creating silos. And what I mean by that is they did what they're supposed to do. That is basically store data. But if you look at it in the modern day and age today, where data needs to come alive, where data needs to be part of your value creation, those storage architectures do not fit the needs. And this is one of the reasons why HPE, we invested in this latest B10000 Alletra MP B10000 architecture. The Alletra MP B10000, if you look at it, it is the industry's first disaggregated scale-out architecture. Now, let's talk about what does this mean? What does disaggregated mean? Disaggregated means is a simple thing. It allows you to scale your storage in multiple dimensions. Whether you want to scale it in terms of capacity, whether you want to scale it in terms of performance, and the way it does it, it doesn't have to go hand in hand. Like again, going back to the older definition of storage, if you look at the older architectures, whenever you wanted to scale capacity or storage, what you needed to do was buy more shelves. And if you need more performance, you need to buy more boxes and HA pairs, right? That paradigm has been broken down by disaggregation, by having an NVMe fabric where you have your controllers and storage attached to it, and you can scale independently. It gives you superior flexibility. It gives you the ability now to point-in-time scale, right? And to allow you to accelerate the outcomes that you're looking for, right? It allows you to reduce your data footprint because now I don't have to over-provision my storage. It allows me to reduce the cost of scaling and bringing in newer technologies. It allows me to take advantage of some of the enhanced AIOps capabilities using Gen AI to help me simplify my cloud experience as well as my operational experience, right? At the end of the day, you're talking about how can I, as an IT provider, make sure that my customers are able to reduce their IT operational expenses and be able to simplify their infrastructure so that they can take those resources and spend those resources in areas where they can create and generate more value out of the data and be able to contribute to the company's bottom line. It also needs to give that customer an ultimate peace of mind to make sure that the data is always going to be available, right? At HPE, we have some of the robust SLAs, like, talk about 100% data availability guarantee, store more guarantee. We allow you to seamlessly integrate newer technologies through our timeless program, and thus delivering better value. Now, on top of it, think about this. This is also a first industry's disaggregated unified architecture, allowing you to run block and file. It allows our customers to meet their desired outcomes around TCO, consolidation, security, sustainability. This delivers a punch that has not been seen in the storage industry. And this is why we are super excited about the study that the ESG team has done, and also look at the outcomes that our customers have achieved.
Thanks, Sanjay. Oh, that was a great overview. And I really think that the B10000 architectures are really a key driver of many of the significant outcomes that came out of the ESG report. And that's a great segue to bringing Nathan into the discussion. So Nathan, welcome. I know that you must have done a ton of these studies over the years. So could you firstly help the audience understand ESG's economic validation process?
Perfect. And you'll hear me call it EVV through it. That way we don't have to say all the words again and again. But what it really does is it's a process to look where companies are out of alignment, where they have a certain need, then they look at their capabilities, then they're out of alignment. So we try to work with research and customers to figure out what made you realize, what's the pain in the pull? What made you realize, hey, what we have right now doesn't fit our needs, we're out of alignment. Or what new capabilities will come with a change that makes it worth, getting out of the, hey, we're good enough. Let's just, continue as is and make this a next year problem instead of a this year problem. We've got industry analysts in every major industry, just about every vertical, and a huge research library. So I start by looking both at our research and I look at HPE's information availability, anything HPE can give me to educate, to really find out what are the main tenets, what are the things about, B10000 that would help a customer understand, hey, we need to get in better alignment. Then I interview customers and ask them, what made you realize you needed to go through a change? What was the change like? What were you expecting? What was the preparation? How long did it take you from we need to do this to we get it? How did you figure out what you didn't know? What help was there? What support was there? What were you expecting? What do you get? So it's just a free flow interview. We talk to multiple companies across all different industries, all different sizes, to understand their pain and their pull. And in the end, the question of what did it do for you? To look at how it changed, again, their alignment, how it changed their measurables, and then get to the point where we build a financial calculator to model or quantify the impact of those changes. And in that, we looked at before and after states. The hard thing is every customer has different pain points. Every customer comes from a different environment or ecosystem. The majority that we talked to had, they had storage, they added storage, and then they realized, as Sanjay mentioned, silos. They realized, my goodness, I have information everywhere. And then the thing that really is a smack in the face is every organization that I talked to said, yes, our data continues to grow. The need for storage continues to grow. But then something I've heard over is really come in about the last 9 to 12 months of the projects I'm doing is just the uncertainty of this growth, specifically around the demands of AI. To look at it and say, what are the challenges? And the challenges include overall complexity. But the challenge that really came out in these interviews was, my goodness, we've got to get data ready to digest in a different way than we ever had before. The complexity of doing that is beyond our capabilities. Not only do we not have the ability to increase our storage that quickly, we're afraid that if we do, we're going to end up in more siloed environments where AI just isn't we're just not set for the future. So I want to actually turn this back over to Sanjay for a minute and ask, when you specifically look at the impact of AI and the complexity that comes with having your data in at a usable format. I don't know if I'm using the correct words. Can you just give us a little bit of information or education on what those specific challenges mean to companies over the next year?
Absolutely, Nathan. I think I want to reiterate a couple of things that you just said, right? I think you said that the customers are trying to adjust to the modern world where you're seeing the data growth, the application changes, and the evolving nature of the applications. Because, as I said earlier, right, one thing we all have to agree that the role of storage has changed. And when I say that, I really mean that because we are not talking about just storing data. Now you're talking about the amount of growth of storage, right? You're talking about exabytes and exabytes of data that is growing dynamically. The applications that are basically now being developed, the cloud native applications, are more and more distributed. It's more about able to access that data so that you can create value out of it. Now, people may ask, what does create value mean? I talk to so many customers, right? They all want to do something about AI, like you just said. The challenge here is, for you to get into AI, you need to know what data you have. The first step of AI is data modernization. If you know what data you have, you can figure out a way to create value out of it. The challenge here is, if your data is lying in silos, if they are lying in cold storage, and if they are not getting access or is not accessible, you cannot modernize your data. For that, you need a different kind of storage system, right? You need a storage that is aligned with what your applications and your needs are going to be. Hence, the idea of delivering a storage architecture that allows you to scale and meet the unpredictability of your workloads. You will have an application tomorrow that's going to say, I want to go and get started with this particular way of value and getting value out of my data. You don't want to be in a situation now you have to wait for where getting new infrastructure in, then figuring out how are you going to provision this, how are you going to use the data, how are you going to access the data, how are you going to move the data around so that it's accessible. That legacy architecture of HA pairs and silos don't work. Hence the need for a modern, reimagined storage architecture, right? That allows you to take advantage of the processing power in the compute that is available today, the processing power in the drives that is available, the NVMe fabric that is available that allows you to robustly scale your storage. Hence this disaggregated architecture that not only just scales to accommodate this data growth, but allows you to provision applications that are more distributed, that require more compute, that allow you to now go and create value of your data. This is the reason why we built Alletra MP B10000. It is industry's first modern cloud-native disaggregated architecture, right? It allows customers to overcome some of these challenges and then focus on their efforts to go create value, whether it's because of the investments they need to make in AI, whether they want to go and now digitize or modernize their data. So this is really a great segue or the great insight into why we are doing this, Nathan. I think I really appreciate when you went in, you're talking about your process of how you go and talk to the customers. I'm pretty sure some of those things have come out of these discussions.
Absolutely. And I like a word that you use, and I've seen used a few times throughout, was reimagination. I've done all I do is I calculate business value. I've done it across all technologies, pretty much any type of business change. And to hear the difference, to hear a customer talk me through, this is where we were, this is what we expected, but my goodness, this is what we found. The reimagination was a word that I like the way it's used here, because it certainly came out in a lot of the stories that I heard. And also, when you look at the overall challenges. So if we go to the next slide, it's just here's some of the reasons that our research finds that customers are being forced to change at a speed that they weren't before. So you mentioned, modernization as a whole. In a second, I'm going to ask you to break that down even more because it's such a buzzword that means certain, different things to different people. But all around different, their SLAs, their service level agreements, or their expectations, the business expectations of storage. And in a second, I'm going to ask you to go through and talk me through a couple of those that you see that really matter and how specifically you can impact them. Cost always matters. When we look at challenges with storage, a lot of people say, that we thought we understood the costing structure, but it got to the point where our business demands just said, we need more, we need it now. And costs quickly spun out of control. There wasn't a single person that told me we went to B10000 because we wanted cheaper storage. But every single one that I talked to said, when we went there, what we found was our data footprint actually went down quite a bit because of the efficiency. The cost ended up being a very positive story. A lot of companies say we want sustainability. We're required by our board to show, hey, we look at our different areas, including storage, in a sustainable way, but we have no clue how to get there. So I also want you to give us a little idea about the overall HPE sustainability story, because I heard quite a few customers tell me, hey, it's a way for us to check these boxes and show that now we're able to piggyback on HPE's initiatives and say our storage is more sustainable. And then when you look at the challenge, so many legacy storage infrastructure limitations. We had a lot of talks around the whole concept of technical debt. How much of your current IT budget is squandered because of decisions in the past, of having to pour money onto old systems because that's what you have to do and that's where you were. And I had estimates up to 55% coming from customers saying 55% of our, we really tried to narrow the conversation into areas where, around storage had some type of impact. 55% of their budget they felt was, the best word for it is squandered, just sort of wasted because they were locked into decisions of the past. It wasn't forward looking. When we look at our benefits, we look at the reasons or what customers are realizing once they change. One of the first ones we term data agility. We had a fantastic quote. We have all these different customer quotes that we injected through the EVV paper. And this one here is all around a shift in attitude, a shift in now storage is a strategic asset instead of just something that is there and has to be done. And I had companies, telling me examples of, we're no longer the people saying no. We're no longer the limitation. We're now able to go out. We have the flexibility to say, what do you need, business units? Okay. And quickly respond and change. So Sanjay, you mentioned digital maturity, and so many things go into that. You've given us a few examples of it. But when you look at digital maturity, when you go out and you talk to customers and hear it, what are the biggest things? What are the biggest area of impacts that B10000 can have in that initiative?
I think Nathan, this is, as you said, I think you said this, right? It's a term that is really, really thrown everywhere, right? It's an overloaded term: digital maturity, data modernization. And me being me, when I a product guy, right? I want to simplify things. When I go to the customers, I end up just asking very simple things. Mr. Customer, let's talk about what are you trying to accomplish? And oftentimes you'll see some random thoughts that have been put over. We need to do this, and we need to get into AI. And it's our job when we are into this industry, right, to help our customers navigate those challenges and to go get to a point where they can accomplish their desired outcomes, right? So you end up asking all these questions about, all right, in order for you to do this, do you have access to your data? Do you have an understanding of where your data is? To me, digital maturity is about ability to understand and have knowledge about your data, about your needs, about the intrinsic value associated with data, so that now you can apply the latest generations of technology, be it AI or other things, that will allow you to capitalize on this and create value, right? Customers at the end of the day are looking to drive IT outcomes. Some of these IT outcomes are what they look for, right? When we go to a doctor, we talk about our symptoms, right? They see things that they need to do, versus some of these outcomes are something that comes because they made the change that they need to do. It is our job as infrastructure providers to build those service level uh, assurances or agreements that will help our customers to achieve those IT outcomes. And these outcomes can be in different categories, right? You're talking about outcomes around data protection. You talked about sustainability, right? That is top of the mind for a lot of these customers. Now, that can be achieved by many means, right? By reducing your carbon footprint, through reducing your power consumptions, through reducing your real estate things. Then to go into something around operational efficiencies. One thing that our customers have always told me is I am being faced with reduced budgets. I don't have the manpower to go and do all those kind of stuff. How are you allowing me to go and accomplish all the things that we need to do? And that's where us as infrastructure providers need to talk about how we can leverage the innovations in the technology, like the AI, generative AI operations, to help our customers bring in that operational efficiencies so that they can take those resources and invest it in areas where they seem necessary, so that they can go and do more with their resources, right? You talk about making sure that the data is always available for their outcomes or for their applications, so that they know that they will achieve those tasks. And the in this whole process, if you look at holistically in terms of infrastructure and what needs to happen, how are you going to reimagine this based on your needs that are evolving, not only for today but tomorrow? And as this needs and this data modernization is going to continue, you start thinking about all those pieces, right? And to me, the biggest impact comes when we talk about how we have helped our customers, how we have built this new reimagined storage infrastructure solution that not only allows customers to meet their outcomes around data protection, operational efficiency, sustainability, availability, but in that whole process allows them to reduce their cost of ownership. And what I mean by that is, like we talked about in this previous things, eliminating silos, consolidating storage, making sure you're utilizing your infrastructure resources to the maximum, so that you are not underutilizing resources which have been wasted out there and not being used because you don't have the right data in the right place, right? Those kind of things which are not visible to the naked eye because you are so used to operating your infrastructure in a certain way. It really takes an effort from a customer's perspective to go embark on this journey of data modernization, to reimagine their infrastructure so that they can not only achieve those outcomes, but also be able to go and get value from their data that will allow them to grow their business. So that is, to me, is the most important piece out here.
There's one thing that came out over and over and over in the interviews that you haven't mentioned, but I want to make sure we call it out, and that is the cost of complexity in storage, and how much, even though we weren't talking an apples to apples migration, generally it was we went from pieces that provided a storage to now we have a platform that better aligns with our business, but it's less complex than what we were in the past. And then, of course, being an economic person, my next question is, okay, what does that mean? Were you able to go faster, more? And I heard stories of faster time to market, from ideation to now we have something available for our customers. And there were examples where it was more than a 50% increase in that. Then, of course, as an economic person, what does that mean for you? I had customers tell me that our revenue has increased because we went to the storage solution, and they gave me specific examples of why. But just to ask you a little bit about the complexity thing that I heard over and over and over as I was interviewing customers.
Yeah, and I think going back to the fundamentals, complexity comes when you basically have a lot of silos where you are now dealing with different operational issues in terms of how things should be managed. You're dealing with different challenges, right? And in order for you to first reduce the complexity, what you need to do is consolidate, right? Not only that, right? I just talk to the customers. Like when I talk to the customers, I'll just give an example of a mundane task, which everybody thinks, oh, it's as we need to do this. Let's say I want to provision a new workload, right? Typically, an IT guy will now have to go through their steps of processes. All right, I need to talk to the developers to figure out what kind of workload is this, what are their performance requirements, what are the kind of storage requirements, what is their growth going to be, how am I going to make sure that availability is there, what kind of protection they need, so on and so forth, right? Now, when you are dealing with all those things, now we have to go and look at it, all my different silos to say, where does this fit in correctly? And if it doesn't fit in, oh, it'll fit in today, but it won't be able to grow. All those things, they may sound trivial, but they end up creating complexities, right? This is where the resources are getting spent. Now, if I, as HPE, allow our customers to say, you know what, I have, with the use of AI and AI ops, simplified that process so that you can accomplish those things in just 2 clicks rather than spending your 2 weeks of time trying to figure out and find those resources. That's the elimination of complexities that we can deliver. And again, I go back to the same point. That is possible with the innovations that we do in the infrastructure. Having the architecture where you don't have to worry about silos because you know that all the data is accessible by all the controllers, or I can scale if my application guy needs more performance in a granular way without impacting my system more. Through AI ops, I can identify all the infrastructure resources which are available and then guide them in a simple 2 clicks to way that this is where you need to provision and these are your data protection policies that you need to apply to it, right? Those things are what allows our customers to not only eliminate those complexity, but in this process, lower their spend, get their better TCO out of this, right? This is the beauty of spending a lot of resources in the infrastructure and building those resources to allow our customers to get to outcomes.
One thing you just reminded me of when you're talking about provisioning a specific customer instance, they went from 9 days, so almost 2 business weeks, from a request to having availability down to less than 30 minutes. And their error rate was about 15%. He said in the past, it would take 9 days, and then they would come up and realize that they didn't have the requirement set and have to go back and put it through the process again. And he said that has been completely eliminated. So it changed the way they were able. It made their entire ecosystem more nimble because they went down. You said 2 clicks. He told me less than 30 minutes, from I need it to I have it in less than 30 minutes. It really changed the way they worked.
And I think the way I look at this, Nathan, is very simple, right? We at HPE have invested in this architecture. We are so confident about the way we go about and what it delivers. We have a robust set of SLAs that are something that we offer to our customers in different means, right? We have a transformed ownership experience so that they can buy with confidence. Not only just buy with confidence, but have the confidence that it will reduce my and lower my TCO by 30 points. I will make sure that there is a satisfaction guarantee, there is a sustainability guarantee along with all these software capabilities and the innovations that we do are something that is always going to be inclusive of the subscription when they buy this storage infrastructure. We'll make sure that they have 100% data availability guarantee. We'll make sure that we give them the assurances and guarantees so that they can be protected against ransomware. We need to make sure that they have the guarantee where they can have their recovery time objectives and recovery point objectives as zero, literally, so that they can ensure that their systems are always operational and their applications are always operational, right? The overall theme behind this is build an architecture, build SLAs and guarantees to support and help our customers achieve their outcomes.
Let me ask you about some things. I know you can explain it so much better than I can. When you talk about your guarantees and your controller, upgrades, tell me about timeless. It's something that came out and quite a few of the interviews, and customers were excited because it took away a lot of the uncertainty of what's going to happen in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. Tell me a little bit about timeless. I was going to explain it, but I know you can do it so much better than I can.
Yeah, so I'm going to go into a little bit of a teaching mode right now, if you don't mind, right?
Okay.
So one of the things, right? What is timeless? Let's talk about timeless. Timeless means your infrastructure is timeless in a way that it is going to be always on. It allows you to incorporate newer technologies seamlessly into your working environment without the need for forklift upgrades, without expensive migrations, without taking any downtime, right? That is what appeals to our customer. Now, to do that, again, going back to the architecture, right? If you look at the old legacy architectures, we talked about HA pair, right? You have now two controllers that talk to the midplane and into the drives. What happens in that architecture is, let's say, as your CPU technology evolves, you will be given newer controllers. However, your backplane remains the same, which is the bottleneck most of the time. Because when you go look at the drive performances that you have in the media and your CPU capabilities, the biggest bottleneck is your midplane. Now think about it. Those two controllers are basically talking to those drives. Now, if I have another HA box, I have those another two controllers talking to those. So basically, it's not a shared storage environment because this second system controllers cannot talk to the first system drives and vice versa. And if they make it drive, it requires a lot of east and west traffic that impacts performance. The disaggregated architecture, which leverages the NVMe fabric as a backplane, so it's scalable. There is no bottleneck. It's ultra low latency. The controllers are stateless controllers attached to those NVMe fabric, which talks to all the drives and the JBOFs attached to the NVMe fabric, which means my controllers are stateless. Now imagine I want to introduce new performance or more faster CPUs into the system. I simply attach it to the fabric. These controllers see all the data. I retire the old controllers and my systems are always on. It's timeless. I can keep doing this and incorporating newer technologies so that it delivers value to the customers. The customers can be assured that they will get the latest and the greatest. They will be able to capitalize on the performance capabilities and be able to in turn realize value from it so that their infrastructure delivers better value and lower TCO. We have estimated this, that if you look at this generation, the customers can expect up to 30-40% easily in terms of their just the infrastructure spend. I'm not talking about the savings that can be cumulative when you start talking about forklift upgrades, migrations, and so on and so forth, right? So customers can significantly benefit and expect larger value and outcomes monetary wise as well as TCO wise because of this timeless program and the architecture that we have.
I knew you could explain it better. I just know the customers talk to me about how it took away a lot of the uncertainty of the future. So thank you for that. When you look at our second benefit bucket that really came out, it was better price performance. And again, it was hard to do this because, again, not a single person told me we went here because it was a lower cost solution. But every single person I talked to said our storage spend is less since we switched to the solution. And asking them why, when going through our calculations, we had so many different before states trying to figure out, what their cost per gigabyte was. I had we settled on a number of a 30% decrease in footprint. And the quote we have up on the screen is one of the better ones. And pretty much people told me every storage vendor tells us about dedupe. And then we actually put it on and we were promised 25% and we saw 3%. And I had quite a few tell me this is the first solution we've seen that, when HPE came in and talked to us about it, they told us we could reach this and we reached it, that the dedupe was actually true. And when I looked at my calculations to come up with our overall, reduction in cost, I used a 30%, which was right about spot on. Every person I talked to said, yes, that is reasonable to assume. So they're able to reduce their footprint quite a bit. Then you look at the other side of the mix, performance gains. I had examples where people said, we've increased our performance 500%. I had one person, I think a quote here, our data throughput is reaching levels we never thought were possible in the past. In my calculations, I used a 28%, which was remarkably conservative based on the stories that I had. But I realized that, how much is your performance going to improve depends completely on what was your system before. And I thought the 28% I used in the calculations was remarkably conservative. That led us overall to a storage cost reduction of 31%, which is, you said 30 a while ago, and I thought that's pretty spot on. When I looked at all the different customers, I picked a conservative number of 31% while improving performance at least 28%. So based on your experience, is there anything about those numbers you think high, low, or any stories to add to them?
Nathan, I'll say a couple of things, right? You touched on 2 points. One is performance and the space savings and dedupe. So let's briefly touch on each component, right? Let's talk about performance first. I just explained the whole architecture of disaggregated and stateless controllers. Like I said, I've been doing storage for 25 years. A lot of times when customers talk about active, there's a lot of buzzwords in storage. What does that even mean? Yes, active means sometimes it means that, both my controllers can accept IOs. However, only one controller will process it in majority of the time because they have to keep the state. They have to have ownership of the drives and so on and so forth. If controller failovers, then the drive ownership needs to change and so on and so forth, right? Storage systems are complicated inside. So people just speak all these buzzwords when they want to not explain these complexities. I just explained you the architecture of stateless and NVMe fabric. When we build this architecture, these controllers are stateless. Each and every controller accessed each and every drive. So there's no silos. Applications can access that data through any of this controller. That means I am using my controllers to the maximum amount of efficiency to process the IOs. I'm not dependent on the ownership of a controller and so on and so forth, which allows me to deliver better performance. It allows me to maximize the utilization of the CPUs and be able to deliver better performance. Hence, no, I'm not surprised that Alletra MP B10000 delivers better performance. Now let's talk about efficiency on the storage side. Again, a lot of jargon and buzzwords about 4:1 dedupe compression. If you look at it, to me, those technologies are ubiquitous. Dedupe compression, everybody does it. The savings are going to be the same from the actual dedupable and compressibility of the data. The challenge here is if you are creating silos and if you are deduping data, but you are not laying out your data in the most efficient way, you are creating inefficiencies, even though you may be able to dedupe more. In a disaggregated shared storage environment, if you are now able to dedupe, compress, and then we have something internally where we have the use of AI that allows us to provision the layout, the storage in such a way that there is more efficient. There are no need for reclamation of storage when data gets deleted or moved around and all those things. In turn, you are now creating additional efficiencies that allow you to lower the cost of dollar per gigabyte and hence be able to store more data. These are the nuances that people need to start thinking about rather than just focusing on dedupe and compression and 4:1, 3:1, so on and so forth. I think we as an industry need to educate and evolve our thinking around efficiencies to see how are we delivering the outcomes and the overall efficiency in the form of TCO, reducing storage footprint rather than just focusing on ratio. That's just one of the things that I
Okay.
keep talking to our customers.
It makes sense. We look at the third thing in price performance, FTE optimization. So we look at just admin efforts. The number across the board was about 43%. So we have 43% fewer admin hours needed for our storage. And then, of course, my next question is an economic person. Okay, what do you do with those hours? And I heard so many different stories into now we're better aligned with our business units. We're able to work on projects in the past we could never get to. Some also came out was the shift. I guess I don't know if the right word, the onus and expertise that they got so much knowledge from HPE. They said, we one person told me that we tried to build that level of expertise internally, and the people were hard to find. They were expensive to keep. But now the best practices, the guidance, everything coming from HPE, shifting that onus a bit to HPE to be the storage experts and allow them to concentrate on their business. But going into the next slide, Simon, if we look at the overall operational costs. So you've talked about quite a few of these, and we looked at everything from your overall data cost, your licensing cost, human error cost. Complexity came out again over and over and over. And okay, what is the cost of being complex? My people get beat down. I heard some stories of how much happier people were working in the B10000 environment than they were in the previous one. We heard I was very conservative in the downtime because I'm trying to remember across my interviews if I had a single instance of storage related downtime. But as an analyst, I have to be ultra conservative to make sure our numbers, retain credibility. So I did include some storage downtime just to be realistic. Hey, something can happen. It's generally going to be a person mistake instead of a technology mistake. We look at our third bucket, Simon, going to the last slide. Look at increased security and reliability. So in my interviews, a lot of it is, are you more secure than you were in the past? Why? And if so, how does that impact you? Whether it be breach or ransomware reduction, to look at the different metrics that people try to measure security and reliability on. One thing that came out, and the first time I heard it, I thought, my goodness, that is a bold guarantee. So the 100% data availability guarantee. Tell me a little bit about how you can promise that, what it means for the customers.
What it means to the customer is very simple, Nathan. It's like you can be 100% assured that your data is going to be available to you, accessible to you every time, right? And the way to do that is because of the system and the architecture that we have built, right? Obviously, if you look at it, if you eliminate those failure points in your system, you can be delivering this kind of SLAs and guarantees with confidence. Not only that, right? We have the robust set of functionalities that ensure that those data is available, whether you're talking about replication, whether you're talking about having reliability within the cluster itself, so that whenever there is a failure, you can ensure that the systems are not going down. The ability now to isolate challenges and problems beforehand so that you can fix them, so that the data and the systems are always available. Those investments eventually translate into the availability guarantee that we give to our customers. And we stand behind that because we know what kind of investments that we have made in this particular platform, and then this behind giving those guarantees to our customers, right? Not only that, you have seen HPE increase and steadily offer more and more robust set of SLAs and guarantees, because as customers start using our products, they love the experience. They are demanding more from HPE, And it's our job to help them get to their outcomes through these guarantees and differentiate ourselves from our competition.
Okay. Also, talk about your ransomware SLAs. I know there are specific things that you can really do to help your customers with that.
Yeah, and I think too, you mentioned data protection. So let me just talk about data
Okay.
protection. I look at things in a simple way, right? So if I look at 1, 2, 3 of the data protection starts where the data gets created, right? And this is the reason why I'm saying this is because this is what allows us to deliver that SLAs around ransomware and data protection. When the data gets ingested, obviously everybody has this. The local data protection is the snapshots. Now, to bring in immutability into the snapshot allows me to protect against ransomware from the first perspective. Then when you come about replication, whether synchronous, asynchronous, active peer persistence, so that you now have literally RTO and RPO of 0, and you still have your data be available. You now have the ability to back up those data points from your primary storage through a third-party integration and archive it out into a robust set of products that we have that allow you to now reduce your storage footprint in terms of your backup copies, but also make it in a cost-effective way and also protect it through immutability out there that's giving you second level of protection against ransomware. Now, when you talk about doing a third layer of protection on top of us, which is basically an application consistent, VM consistent, this is where the technologies like Zerto comes into the picture, where we have granular checkpointing and be able to do those things at the finer granular seconds, like in seconds of time, and be able to protect those applications and be able to recover through different checkpointing and journaling, so that in case if there is an attack or a vulnerability, you can recover in a much granular way, going back to getting your systems up and running in the shortest possible time. Then comes the need for creating air gap environments, and where we have solutions like our Zerto Cyber Vault, which allows you to give that isolation in an air gap way so that you get now complete ransomware protection or cyber resiliency, right? So there's a lot of stuff. What we have done now is we have added another layer into this as part of the core functionality of the B10000, which is while the data is ingesting, we have telemetry data that has been built, right? Anomaly detection that allows me to flag anomalies and be able to then help our customers identify those anomalies and take corrective actions through all the solutions that I talked about. So if you look at this portfolio of data protection that we have, this is what allows us to give this kind of ransomware assurance and guarantees, allows us to give RTO, RPO guarantees, ensuring our customers' data is always going to be safe.
So many stories that I heard from customers started with, I wish I would have known sooner. I just didn't know. What do you wish people would understand as they're starting to think through their storage strategies? If you were allowed to grab and say, you just need to know this, what would you tell them?
I think I've been saying this in every presentation, don't look at the buzzwords and the over thrown terms out here around data modernization. Look at the fundamentals of storage, talk to the companies and understand and ask the right questions. It all has to be tied to the outcomes that you want to accomplish. And the solution that allows you to meet those outcomes not only today, tomorrow, is what you really need to invest in. And in order for that, you need to really, really think about your infrastructure in a different way. You need to look at your storage in a different way. You have to literally reimagine the storage. And I keep saying this all the time because at HPE, we have significantly invested our resources in building this new architecture. I've been doing storage for 25 years. The only reason why I am so excited and passionate and every morning come up and do this, because I know I'm making a change. And that change is what is exciting, right? And where you are now helping customers meet their IT outcomes, achieve their IT outcomes through all the innovations that we are bringing in. So take a look at the innovations that HPE is doing with the B10000 platform, and I'm pretty sure you will be able to achieve your outcomes that you're looking for.
Very good. So Simon, that's I think a good synopsis of the EVV process and the findings, and I'm sure you'll tell everybody how to find the paper to go in and read it in detail.
Yeah. So I think we're coming up to the end of our time here. So I want to thank everyone for joining today's discussion. We hope it was beneficial, and we hope it gives you a real sense for how the B10000 can really help you save time and money, as well as reduce risk in your business. So for further information, I'd encourage you to review the whole report. You'll get a lot more information there than we were able to cover today. You can either download it from the resources section here or go to the B10000 page on hpe.com. I also want to give a quick shout out for our HPE Discover 2025 flagship event that's coming up in Las Vegas, the week of June 23rd. This year, Discover promises to be our boldest event yet, and it's designed to provide you with the latest insights into innovations across networking, AI, and hybrid cloud, all in one place. So please mark your calendars for the week of June 23rd, and we hope to see you there either virtually or in person. But with that, I want to thank everyone again for joining, and special thanks to Nathan and Sanjay for a great discussion. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Nathan.
I enjoyed meeting your customers and enjoy telling the stories. So thank you.